Dear friends, Operator Starsky here, and this is In Time. Guys, please subscribe to this channel because you can find all kinds of recent updates from Ukraine analysis and all kinds of interesting guests, not including myself, of course, but I will be present here as well. Hopefully, we'll see you soon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the rundown. We are preparing right now for Donald Trump's announcement and speech regarding the attacks. We've had a chance to sort of take a brief census of what's going on. The Raw story said something which is eloquent. As much as I dislike Trump, there needs to be a couple of clarifications on a couple of things, but the Raw story did say that until now, at least, the man who had killed the most Americans was not Adolf Hitler, but rather Robert E. Lee. And it's an interesting argument, and I get the point. I'm reasonably confident. I think it's more than cautious optimism. I'm reasonably confident that his assertion that Trump will now dwarf Robert E. Lee is not true. But nonetheless, we have what we have. There are two outcomes and two scenarios as to what's happened so far, according to unofficial sources from Mossad. The attacks were unprecedented success, even more than they had thought. The sites that they were targeting have, in fact, been utterly destroyed. Let me see if I can bring these up here. Let's see. Thank you to Carpathian for this. Let's see. Fordow is the biggest one. Iraq had previously been, I think, let's see, Isfahan. All right, so one of the issues, well, I'll get into what one of the issues is. The Fordow site was considered the high prize. That is where they enriched the uranium, and it was 300 feet down, which is 100 feet more than our bunker busters can hit. We apparently launched a huge amount of ordnance on top of it to create basically a 100-foot crater before dropping a bunker buster on top of it, and the bunker buster has destroyed that site. That is what the unofficial report is coming out of Israel. There seems to be some confirmation of that. Iran has now confirmed that the three sites were in fact struck. So there's no question, not that there was, but there's certainly no question that we struck those three sites and did so successfully. By all accounts, the damage has been quite considerable. The unofficial reports coming out of Mossad state that this has irreparably destroyed Iran's nuclear ability. When you take into account the number of scientists that have been targeted and or assassinated, when you take into account the entire military leadership that has been eliminated, the vast majority of which has been eliminated, and the destruction of facilities and supplies, Iran cannot recover their nuclear program, at least not in any meaningful sense, maybe in 10 years, but it's not, it is gone. There is a few other assessments that we've seen. You can see we've got ABC News down in the central window. That's where we're going to be carrying Trump's speech. They've had several people on who have said that it has not been nearly that successful, that even if all of these sites have been destroyed, the two most precious things to them are the uranium that they already have, which is sufficient to make a bomb, make several bombs, I think they had said up to between between 8 and 14 was the assessment. That uranium and the knowledge. And while they may have lost a lot of their scientists, they have not lost the knowledge, and the uranium has been moved, both according to Iran and to intelligence sources. And they believe it's been moved to a location that has not yet been struck, and nobody knows where it is. The uranium can actually be carried in reasonably small containers. They're about the size of a scuba tank. It's very hard to follow those and follow where they're going, and the assessment that we're seeing is that they may well have, they may well have successfully saved most of their uranium. We do have Commander McMillan, and I think, unfortunately, I moved like the wrong camera here, so let me make sure we can get him in, because obviously he is going to be... Oh, in fact, we are completely disconnected from... So let's get Commander McMillan in here. And all right, so we should be good, and he should be able to join us presently. Let me quickly text him, because he may not know. All right, we should be able to have him join at any minute. So there's varying assessments. There he is. Hello, Commander. How are you?
Pretty good.
Thank you very much for joining us. So the president will be on momentarily. So the assessments coming out of Israel is that their weapons program has been completely destroyed. A lot of news organizations are saying that that's what they believe. We've been listening to ABC here, and they've had on a couple of experts who say, that's not quite as... They may have lost their centrifuges, but the reality is most of the uranium had been moved. We see no indication that any of it was hit, and the uranium can be held in containers about the size of a scuba tank, and that's pretty hard to track. And so as of this moment, we don't know where the uranium is. They may have lost their scientists, but they could still make a bomb if they so choose. And in fact, because we don't want to create inadvertently a dirty bomb, we haven't, struck anything that's like topside that's, filled with uranium. So
the other thing that makes me dubious about those claims is that it takes a fair amount of time to do a solid BDA, or bomb damage assessment, after you hit a target. And in this case, it was, not even an hour had passed. Basically, once the aircraft were outside Iranian airspace, suddenly it was, oh yeah, we blew them to crap. Look at us. Aren't we great? It's like, well, you don't know for sure whether you did.
Which I didn't realize, but especially I would imagine if the target was under 300 feet of Earth, it's going to be pretty hard to tell, and especially if there wasn't uranium in it, and nothing serious that would leak out, it's going to be really hard until you can get somebody on the ground really who's going to look at it. Now Mossad may be able to get that done, but that isn't going to be the U.S. figuring that out.
Yeah, exactly.
So while we're here, we let's see, we got a super chat, and I want to make sure we get that. Michelle Ferguson, $9.99. Thanks for all you do, Nick and team. Thank you very much. We do enjoy it, but we also, the support is a huge help. So thank you very much for that. Jester, $2. Game over. That could be meant in two ways, as in game over for the Iranians or game over for everybody. As I said before, the raw story is saying that, and you may not have heard this, Commander, but they used an interesting story saying that one single human being who's killed the most Americans is Robert E. Lee, and more Americans even than Hitler, and now it's going to be Trump. I'm not sure. I think they're concerned about this escalating to World War III. Again, I can see a path there, but we can often see a path there. It doesn't mean it's the most probable or even a particularly likely path.
Exactly.
Daddy Jim, 10 pounds sterling. Thank you, Nick, for your amazing work, sir. You're doing an amazing job. Slava Ukraine always. It's been a while since we've covered Ukraine, and there's been a lot going on, but we definitely have not stopped caring about it, and we appreciate that people understand we are a news channel. Ukraine we've covered because we believe it's important.
And the White House had told us just...
So we'll continue to do so, but we cover other things as well. So here is Donald Trump. Yep.
Meeting with his national security team earlier today at the White House. Let's listen to the president.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan 𝐒𝐨𝐿, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel. And God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump.
All right, so that was Trump's comments. We did get somebody pointed this out in the live chat, and I think this is worth noting. So right here, let's see, the Vance appears to be kind of looking at the president, and then you can see at one point, yeah, there you go. something has caught his attention off to the side, and we have confirmed that somebody was moving a couch behind the set there, and he just got distracted. So, and when he actually like addressed God did he talk to God in the first person in this? He's like, and God, oh God, thank you God for like, wow. Yep. All right. Thoughts, Commander?
As I typed in the comments here, hyperbole much?
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
It's just like one inflated term or phrase after another, none of it substantive, and a number of gross inaccuracies. The Iran has been blowing up American arms and legs. No, that was the Taliban, who are actually enemies of Iran. So, yeah, facts straight, dude.
Yeah, it's well, and then people go, I mean, here's the thing, and everybody's going to be at the water cooler tomorrow, and they're going to be like, yeah, we killed the people who've been blowing up the arms and legs of. No, it's not. I know you saw it on television, and you saw the president. Yeah, no, Iran is not. Oh my God. And it was also sort of like, I remember when we were taking out Saddam Hussein and trying to explain to people that's like, well, wait a minute. If you want somebody, then if bin Laden were ever to successfully take out the U.S., Hussein is his next target. And Hussein knows this. Hussein says he wants Al-Qaeda gone as badly as we do. And he was actually very helpful at the start of I was like, now it's like, well, we're going to go after him because he gassed 10,000 of his own people. Well, how about in Darfur, where we're losing 10,000 people a month due to genocide? Well, apparently, no, it's much more important to avenge the deaths of 10,000 people 10 years ago than it is to stop a genocide happening right now, which is oddly similar to the situation we find ourselves in here. The other assessment that I've seen on a couple of different channels, I was watching Fox News for a while. What I find interesting is that they can continue to say things that are so patently that will be proven wrong in the future, and they just continue as if nothing happened.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that they're going to be wrong about this. There's one of two possibilities I see going forward. One, this ends. Two, this continues. And I'm not actually trying to be cute or clever about this. Now, if it ends, there's two ways it could end. Regime change, the people overthrow the regime, or the regime surrenders. The regime is not going to surrender. It's basically death if they're not going to surrender. So the question is there going to be regime change? And what are your thoughts on the possibility of that?
The likelihood of regime change in the terms that he's thinking of, and that most of us are thinking of, requires U.S. forces to take Tehran, which I don't see happening anytime soon. If you're thinking of it in terms of the Iranian people rising up and overthrowing the Ayatollahs, it's unlikely. There's a lot of popular support for them, particularly amongst the folk in the countryside. The urban populations, not so much, but Iran is still largely a rural country. About 70% of the population lives in small villages and towns, not in the big urban centers. So getting those people motivated to oust the regime is questionable, I would say.
Well, and you and I both spoke with Alex for some time. We had a show with him. He was trying to oust the regime. you had brought up, in order to do that, usually you have to have a charismatic leader who's leading that resistance. Otherwise, everything just collapses. And we don't see either of those two things happening. So what I was hearing on Fox News and was on ABC, they were very good about it. They're like, look, it's going to either be regime change, which is what we're hoping for. We think there's a good possibility of that. Nothing I've seen suggests there's a good possibility of that. So if that's not what happens, then we've eliminated the this is going to end option. So I said there were two ways. There are two things that are going to happen. Either this stops here, and that's either with their surrender, which they will not do, or regime change from within. The regime collapses because all the generals are gone, and that was the argument that was made. They've eliminated so many of the generals, which they have, but this is a fanatically religious country. I think just eliminating the generals doesn't necessarily get them to stop, especially if they think God is on their side, which they do. Yeah.
There's also a question of which generals, because Iran has essentially three militaries, each with its own, air and naval wing. So you have the Artesh, which is the actual army as we would think of an army. Then there's the Pasandran, which is the Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is actually bigger and gets most of the prime equipment before the Artesh does. So they're by far the stronger. And then there are the Besiege, who are the basically peasant militias. These are the guys that during the Iran-Iraq War were sent over in human wave attacks to try to overwhelm the Iraqi defenses. And those are just, they go to the village and say, yep, we need 20 people. Send us your kids. And that's what they do.
Oh, my God. So,
and
all right.
What I'm getting at is if you kill the generals from the wrong group, well, you're not going to affect regime change, because the regime is largely held in place by the Revolutionary Guard. There's not a lot of happiness by the Artesh for the way they're treated, and the besieged don't really have significant leadership, and what they do have is kind of half in, half out of the Revolutionary Guard Corps. So it gets really complicated. It's hard to see how you could get a regime change without an outside leader. And I know that a number of expat groups here in the U.S., Iranian expat groups, the largest population of Iranians living outside of Iran is in the U.S., specifically in the Los Angeles area. And most of those are former backers of the Shah. And they're trying to put the Shah, or his son rather, back on the throne. Except the Shah and the Pahlavi family are utterly despised by most people in Iran. So that's not going to happen. So you've got a leaderless force that's going to supposedly oust the regime, which has very strong, internal security apparatus to maintain its power.
So it looks like then this, and we've heard now, we had mentioned this earlier, that the embassy in Israel the U.S. embassy in Israel had not been evacuated. It now has been, and we've finished the process of getting as many Americans out of Israel as we can. It is clear that we are anticipating a significant response. As of yet, according to ABC News, the skies over Israel are actually completely clear. There's no attack going on right now, no counterattack. My suspicion is that what you had said is probably follows, is now they're like, well, Israel is a distant second to what they've got to worry about right now. Doesn't mean they're going to stop, but they're going to take a breather. Much as they did after the killing of General, oh God, I've forgotten his name. There's just so many generals that have been killed. I almost said 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐜𝐿 you know what I'm talking, the one that Trump mentioned in his speech. Took them a few days, but they retaliated. So there seems to be a lot of sort of cautious optimism, and Trump appears to, whether he actually believes it or not, be projecting this. They're not stupid enough to keep fighting us. We've got the best military in the world. We hit the hardest targets. We can hit everything that's left. So it's done. It's over. They need to an unconditional surrender. And I think you and I agree at this point that that's not going to be what's going to happen. So you've had some time to think about it. You mentioned one possibility earlier, but a new show. So I'll ask you again, what do you think now going forward Iran is going to do?
I think Iran has to respond somehow. And the obvious, easiest, and most effective way of responding would be to close the Straits of Hormuz, probably by mining. That area through that strait passes a significantly large portion of the world's oil, carried in those super tankers. And if you cut that off and have no other way for that to get out, and I'm not talking Iranian oil specifically, I'm talking all the Gulf states. That's where most of their oil flows from. And if that's cut off, then you end up with a global recession almost inevitably. That in turn causes all sorts of other issues. So that would be one way to quickly bring the U.S. to the negotiating table and figure out some way to stop the conflict and maybe get reparations payments or something.
I've heard it said that this is so popular. So apparently, again, I was listening to a number of news sources, ABC, one of them. Apparently, Bibi was really pressuring Trump to do this, and we know why. Trump is actually correct. Sorry, I think a couple of days get shaved off my life every time I say that. Trump was correct that really we're probably the only nation in the world that could have hit that bunker that far down. And Bibi knows it, and he wants it gone. And so we've done it. And that accomplishes largely the biggest objectives for Israel in this, destroying a huge amount of the Iranian infrastructure. So the war still continues, and Bibi still stays with a war cabinet, which is smaller than the normal voting bloc that could dissolve parliament. So he is still in power. But the question is, if the U.S. enters, I mean, is there a stomach for the U.S. to really enter past the mining of the strait how long haul are we looking at here, do you think? And is this so popular in Israel? Because apparently in Israel, they're just like, wow, this is it. We've basically won the war. It's over. And everybody seems to be thinking this is over right now. Could Netanyahu actually survive if they were no longer at war and everything was restored to normal?
We know one of the proximate causes why Israel launched the strikes on Iran, the recent ones, is because Netanyahu needed to go to that smaller wartime cabinet so he wouldn't get a vote of no confidence, because the general consensus was that he was one vote shy of being able to remain in power. By going to the smaller cabinet, he's now 2 votes up. So he's quite safe the way he is right now. The question about whether this keeps Bibi in power or not hinges on whether that -1 vote stays negative after the war is over and you go back to a full-time cabinet, because there's going to be, assuming that people view it this way, or it, is it a victory for Israel that the U.S. intervened and now has taken the brunt of Iranian ire off of Israel? So he might be able to stay in power even if they go to a peacetime cabinet.
So how long would it take for them to, if they started mining, would obviously presumably start to try to attack any ships they were mining with, but as you pointed out, you can mine with just about any ship. How protracted could this get, or how protracted is it likely to get, do you think?
To conduct the mining operation, they could probably have enough mines in place to claim that they'd close the straits within about 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah. The trouble is, mines need to be reseeded periodically to keep your minefield functional, because they have once they're in the water, they have kind of a shelf life. So the longer things wear on, the less likely that there'll be enough mines to make that minefield credibly prohibitive for transits. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is insurance, because every supertanker has to have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And transiting that strait, if there is even the rumor of a minefield, the insurance rates soar. So even if oil is still getting in and out, the price of that oil has just gone up astronomically because of all the insurance premiums.
Let me ask a really, it's just an interesting ancillary question. If you created a minefield underwater and you have to reseed the minefield, I would assume you would have to go into the, how do you reseed a minefield that's underwater? How do you do that?
Basically load mines into the back of some vessel. I mean, it could be, like I said, a little fishing boat, could be a high-speed pleasure craft. It's not going to carry many mines, but it can carry at least one. And mines, people tend to think of mines in the old World War II fashion of the big iron ball with spikes sticking out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's no longer a mine per se. Many of the mines they have now are much more sophisticated. So the mine will ignore smaller craft passing by.
Oh.
And it will say, until you meet a certain threshold of size, I'm not going to go off.
I got to tell you, I'd still be a little uncomfortable, like being the guy driving the boat, being like, we're going through a minefield right now.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Because you said reseeding the minefield in the first thought.
Because they know what they deployed, and they probably put a mix of different types of mines out there, then yeah, it gets complicated. You have bottom laying mines, you have tethered mines, you have floating mines, all of this. And even if you stop them reseeding, you still have to go through and clear those mines out to the point where the insurance companies will say, okay, we trust you, it's clear, mines are no longer an issue, and we'll revert to regular rates.
And it's capitalism. They're not gonna play with that, because that could bankrupt them.
My point is that if you can lay a decent minefield in 24 to 36 hours, you probably have to take 2 to 3 months to do a valid mine clearance operation.
Jesus.
Yeah. Because even one mine going off, that changes everything.
All right. So let's see. Daddy Jim, 10 pounds sterling. He really is coherent tonight. Someone must have reprogrammed the rabbits in his head. 2-week rule. No, it was so. If he had said gerbils, I'd have thought he was talking about me. But he was talking about Trump. That one came in during the speech. He was sort of, but it's clear they had a teleprompter, and it's clear they kept it short. And they're like, okay, just read the teleprompter and then get the hell out of there. And everybody looks so. I mean,
and look for the IV bandage on his hand.
Yeah.
No, seriously, have you seen that?
I haven't seen that. I've heard about a catheter, but
you look at it, and it's a fairly big IV bandage covering what probably is an IV shunt, and then they put a huge amount of pancake makeup over it, so you can't really see it unless you have a really detailed picture of it.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they're probably pumping him full of all sorts of drugs to keep him at least semi-coherent.
Which, of course, when you do that to Biden, it's a big thing. But when you do it to Trump, and it's just sort of like, of course they're going to...
He's healthier than a football player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, what happens is, you see, I've learned that all the fat from the McDonald's burgers actually insulates your arteries. And he's stronger than an ox. And the other people behind me, it's just like Rubio looks so. They all. This does not strike me as a very presidential, but who cares what it looks like? It's just still. Oh dear Lord! All right, so I thank you for that. Yeah, he's probably hopped up on something, and this is, like I said, this is for Israel a huge win. What it does for the U.S., I don't know. And to some extent, I don't care, in as much as I'm not an isolationist. But to the people who are for isolationism, I'm sitting there going, can you at least have a brain about it and think about, does this really help us? And they're trying to pitch and sell the idea that it does. The hundreds of thousands of people Americans that Iranian bodies have, arms and legs and all this other stuff, and all of it is horse shit. I've got no problem getting behind Trump if he can tell the truth, and if he can operate and function based on reality. He can't. In fact, he operates the exact opposite way. He operates with subterfuge, bullying, lying, intimidating. That's what he does, and that's what he's done from day one. That's just who he is.
And I think equally important is that the lying, I'm not convinced it's deliberate lying. I think he actually believes about 90% of what he spouts, because he has such a warped view of what things are.
It strikes me, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but it strikes me that he's capable of creating his own reality. That what he says is true, that he'd pass a polygraph. I mean, it's true at the time that he says it. And if there's another reality tomorrow, and by the way, we all do this to some degree. The difference between mental illness and everybody else usually is not a qualitative difference. We think of it as a qualitative difference, but it's not. It's a quantitative difference. We all talk to ourselves from time to time. It's the guy who's having a conversation with himself, in a postal office, and starts getting mad in the conversation that we worry about. But it's actually not that he's doing something all that different that we all do. It's the degree. We all live in denial about at least a few things in our lives. It's when it becomes a problem that it's a mental illness. All of us are addicted to something, but it's when it becomes a serious problem, when it's, whatever. Anyways, now that I'm down off my soapbox, Jester, 2 members, 2 months member. Thank you very much for your membership. Members really help keep this channel going. It's just a commitment to just every month, a small amount. Really appreciate it. So thank you very much for your membership. Okay, I'm going to try. I feel like doing it in a Trump voice, even though it's Vance. I just don't have his cadence down. But you don't understand. It's such a couch. It's the most couches like this you've never seen, and I would never ever. After we were done here, yeah, he's. It is quite a couch. To be fair, I've never been with a couch. But I have to say, if I were going to be with a couch, if you put a gun in my head and said, you must have relations with a couch, that would have been the couch I'd have chosen. So I get it. So at any rate, I do want to, in the interest of being fair too, because I hate it when it's like mainstream media, it doesn't take a lot to get this shit right. Trump did not change his views on Iran. Trump did not. And we're going to have Greg Terry joining us, actually. So give me a second. We'll put Greg Terry down in there. I want to finish this thought before I do it. He did not say they have 2 weeks. He said, I will decide within 2 weeks. That is what he said. There's been a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, he said he was giving them 2 weeks and then he broke his word." No, that is not what he said. That's not at all. So I disagree with what Trump's doing. I disagree with, but this is exactly what he said. He said, "I will decide within 2 weeks." It's been within 2 weeks, and he decided.
What do you want to make a bet that somebody from the Pentagon suggested that specific wording
about
the 2 week thing? Because people are very accustomed to him saying something about 2 weeks and then not delivering. So if you've moved all these forces into place, and not all of it is terribly covert, because you can find open source conjecture about, U.S. tankers being deployed to Europe and B-2 bombers taking off and flying out and, that kind of stuff, then you're kind of telegraphing that you're at least positioning forces for a potential attack. But as I said, moving those kind of assets, which is very expensive, means you're very likely going to employ them. So they wanted some sort of cover to act as sort of an operational deception.
All right, and we have Greg Terry now joining us. You don't quite see him yet. I'll work on that. Mr. Terry, thank you very much for joining us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. Been a little bit of a busy night, but doing well, thank you.
It has been, and just finished up our live broadcast, and it's really interesting. And I jumped in because I actually want to hear your guys' opinion, and I want to hear from Commander. And I was listening in the green room here behind the scenes, and I was getting it, especially with the movement of forces. We talked about that the other night, Commander. So much stuff was moving, and then it may have been yesterday with Jonathan Fink. I can't remember, but I had a feeling it would be a weekend attack, whether it was this weekend or next weekend. Allows times for markets to. I mean, could you imagine if the stock market was opening tomorrow and what would unfold? So
boom.
Yeah. But I just wanted to hop in here and say thank you for covering it as well. It took us by surprise, kind of. But I had a feeling. I don't know about you guys. There was too much stuff happening, too much stuff moving, and I had made my thumbnail 3 hours ago, and I just saved it. And then Prof and I were talking about it all day long. And I said, man, make your thumbnail, because I think we're going to hit them. I just got a gut feeling we're going to do this. And we don't need to be trying to scramble and make a thumbnail. And, let's just, we go live at a second's notice. And so we were ready, and he was actually at the dollar store with his kids. And I called him. I said, it just happened. I'm going live. And he, left and came home and jumped in. But Commander, really, what do you think happens next?
Honestly, I don't think what they've done is sufficient to force a capitulation or regime change in Iran. The government has its fingers too far deep in the tendrils of the country for that to happen. To effect that kind of change, we're going to need to put boots on the ground. I have seen nothing thus far suggesting that we're actually moving ground forces into the region. So that, to my thinking, leads me to believe that if this is going to continue, and I can't see why it wouldn't continue, that it's largely going to be an air war.
Well, and the mining of the Strait of Hormuz as well, right. You had mentioned, which I think is important.
That would be the devastating thing on global economy, which would be
huge
plus benefit to Russia. It's going to be interesting to see. I put a video out yesterday on, it was Putin and Peskov talking about Iran and, you know, how they're going to view this very negatively, you know, if we move to a regime change in the future, or the bombing of the nuclear sites. And Vladimir Putin talked specifically about that because there's a lot of Russians working there. I can tell you guys now that the Ayatollah Khomeini did just make a public statement 9 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Americans are expected to suffer more severe damage and blows than those they have suffered in the past. We are coming. That's his statement. I don't think, I will tell you this, and I had it on the live stream, and that is Israel was saying there's really two options now. And that is surrender and stay in power, fight back and lose the regime. That's what Israel's putting out.
Yeah.
I think it would have to be some groundwork internally for that to happen as well.
Yeah. And we do have, unless I'm mistaken, because that's part of one of the assessments that I saw of all the forces that we have there. I agree with you. I wanted to do the thumbnail for it tonight, and I said, okay, I've got two choices. I can either do the thumbnail on the assumption it's going to happen today, or I can get done all the things I have to do today and then come up with a really bad thumbnail, but at least I can stream as soon as it happens. And the reason was, for me, what did it was the B-2s heading towards Guam, and I'm sitting there going, why on earth? We've got enough B-2s there already. It's really expensive to move these things, and you're moving them from other locations. I was like, why, unless the difference between these B-2s and the others is these are armed, and they're gonna, you know, so rightly or wrongly, I'm just sitting there going, there's too much, like you had said, there's too much motion.
Yeah. We were knowing it then. Let me ask you this.
We don't have that many B-2s left.
Yeah.
I think they're only like
surprised at
11 still operational.
Yes. Are you surprised it was able to happen and it was done and our planes were out of the, you know, the danger zone before the world knew anything about it? I mean, that you expect that, Commander?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes and no. Yes, I would expect that. We've done that before. We've done that in many, and then the president walks up and says, we've just done it. I mean, the killing of Osama bin Laden was that way. And he had actually been dead for hours before.
Pause.
Yeah.
But that was not in the era of social media that we're in today. It was not as well developed.
That's a good point, but also to that, I mean, there were people in Tehran who said we've seen a huge explosion to the east, so there was some talk about it. The reason I am surprised is because it was Trump's team doing it, which means there's still some, even very, very high up in the command structure, probably directly below Hegseth, competent generals. And when Trump had said something about dropping a nuclear bomb on Tehran or something like that, and one of the generals was just casually asked about it. He goes, "We're not dropping a nuclear bomb on Tehran." It was just boom. And he didn't care about whether he was contradicting. He was just like, let's everybody calm down. And so the fact is, I was pleased that the U.S. could still perform to the level that I've come to expect. I don't think we will be able to continue at that level after 4 years when you see what Trump has been doing to the civilian side of the government. It's happening much slower in the military side, but it's going to happen. He put Hegseth in charge, for Christ's sake. That's not somebody who takes the military seriously.
Yep.
We do have a super chat, and I think it's a good question, and it ties into Greg Terry. Dunk on you, $20. Will Tacos' actions fix Putin's with Ukraine? Time will tell. So we were talking about now the GDP of Russia is reasonably well, but last I saw they are at a 30% inflation, and it's I mean that's just like that's a floating number. They could be at 120 for a day. It's all over the place, and there's talk that their regime could collapse from an economic failure reasonably soon, very much as the Soviet Union did. This, in my mind, would appear to change it if indeed oil can't get through the strait. I would imagine Russia may now have a new, very big card up its sleeve. Thoughts?
Yep. No, absolutely.
I don't know if I'll be able to sleep tonight while I'm waiting to hear what's going to come out of Putin's mouth. And it's not that I need to hear what's going to come out of his mouth, but there's been a lot of rhetoric floating around in Russia this week with Putin and Peskov and Lavrov. And now the United States has actually struck these places. What are they going to say now? That's what's going to be the interesting thing, how they spin it, how they try to use this to their advantage. So we just have to wait and see. Anything we do other than that speculation. I can tell you that after his statement, Donald Trump has just truthed or tweeted any retaliation in all caps by Iran, any. And see, this is right after Ayatollah Khomeini put his statement up.
Yeah. Okay?
Yeah. 10 minutes ago, I told you it was 10 minutes ago or so. Ayatollah Khomeini made that statement. Now, 6 minutes ago, or 8 minutes now, any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Thank you, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. And that's it. All caps. Our nuclear are they nuclear? Our submarines that launch the Tomahawks.
All of our submarines are nuclear. We do not have conventional subs anymore.
Pretty impressive, huh? I mean, we're telling you in your wheelhouse stuff. You know what can happen, but pretty damn impressive.
Is this going to be is this a moment for you, Greg? I'm just asking, where it's sort of like, and this is just a question. I'm just asking questions where you're going to sit there and say, thanks to Ronald Reagan, we modernized and got rid of the diesel subs, and they're all nuclear now because of Ronald Reagan. Is that what I'm about to hear?
That would be unfair for me because I had to have the commander confirm they were all nuclear. So that would be an assumption that I knew they were all nuclear. So I wouldn't do that
before
to you,
Reagan.
But I will take any opportunity to say that I'm thinking about Ronald Reagan right now.
Okay. Okay. Well, good. Well, I'm glad we got that.
I will say this as well, and just a couple of things. I've been going for 3 hours now, and I just wanted to pop in here and say thank you guys and ask the commander some questions, and you, Nick, and see what y'all were talking about. But the statement Trump made, I'm sure you streamed that. You played that as well?
Yeah. We played his statement.
Yeah. He definitely was reading it off of a script and didn't get off script too much. He put probably some adjectives in there that were not in the script, but in general, and even to me, I told on our live, I said, it was almost like I could hear a little nervousness in his voice. Maybe recognizing that, we don't know what world we're going to wake up to tomorrow. Commander, do you expect Iran to sling some missiles at American bases?
I think there's a distinct possibility that they will.
And that would be a bad mistake.
Yeah, because we have bases in Iraq, we have bases in Kuwait, we have base in Qatar, we have bases, unmanned bases, but stockpiles of equipment and such in several other of the Gulf state nations.
But they know how our economy works as well. So here's a question. Are they going to just sit there and, because they, again, with the killing of their general, they waited, they're patient, which is about the worst thing you can have in an enemy is patience. That's one reason why Ukraine does so well, is because they are unbelievably patient. But they can wait till Monday or Tuesday, the stock market's rolling fine, and then engage in some attack. And especially if it only takes them 24 to 36 hours to mine the strait, then, you know, they can sort of do all simultaneously on the assumption that, you know, it's going to take the U.S. at least, even if the U.S. is ready, 12 hours to come up with some kind of retaliation plan. And so they just start mining at night, Monday morning attack, try to get it all wrapped up and out of there. And then, yeah, the U.S. can do catastrophic damage. But in the meantime, what's happening to the markets? What's happening to the oil?
Very good point on it could be a delay and let the markets get going and get some responses internationally and then do something. I will tell you that Israel after the attack, they put half their air force in the air to defend just in case there was a massive strike back or something was prepared. So they were ready. I can tell you also tonight that there has been some fire into Israel from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, just a little bit right now. Something else that's interesting, the photos. I shared the photos of the Situation Room, about 10 of them, where Trump and his guys were watching everything unfold live. And somebody that I followed just noted Tulsi Gabbard wasn't in the room. She didn't appear in any photos shared by the White House. So I'm bringing that to your attention as well. I know that's...
Is that because she's on the outs or just basic general misogyny in the administration?
I don't know, but I think she may be on the outs.
Yeah.
Oh, I think she may be done. Listen, I'm not a fan of hers, but I do think she recognized that Trump was being played by Netanyahu, that they were not nearly so close to a nuclear weapon, that there were no assassination attempts on Trump, and that this was a play on him. And I think actually for his own good and out of loyalty, she stood up to him, stood up to everybody who said this is real, and said, no, it's not. It's just not. And even if you're doing it in his favor, you do not stand up to Trump, period. Never stand against the family. It literally is that kind of, and so I think she may have so forcefully defended what we really are reasonably sure is true, which is that they hadn't been working on a program since 2003. This is what she testified to. And this is what the UN's been saying. This is what everybody who's looked at it has been saying, except for the only people who really proffer by lying about it, which is Israel, who was caught lying about it when they tried to say, oh, they're violating the treaty that the U.S. signed. Look, here, see these weapons. We're like, wait a minute, yeah, these are real weapons, but these pictures are from like 6 years ago. They literally tried to trick the U.S. into, and now, you know, Netanyahu, and I hate to say oh my God! This is Alice through the looking glass. But to Tucker Carlson,
criticize his very good buddy, that's crossing a Rubicon. You can't come back from that one.
And as Tucker Carlson pointed out, it's like, where's the evidence that anything Netanyahu has said about these assassinations? If there really is an assassination attempt, we should be at war in Iran, but we should have been at war as soon as that evidence came in. There's no evidence. There's no nothing. Here we are being told this conveniently after the fact so that Trump will, and Tulsi Gabbard, who is the most competent of them, which is still really not saying much, I think had a fairly good understanding.
Completely.
Yeah, well, thank you. You and I agree on far more than we disagree, which is convenient, because sure. I'd hate to have to school you on everything that you are wrong about, but that's for another show.
And I'm ready to go to class. I'm ready.
But I think
I always want to learn. But
yeah,
I'll say this, and I'll hop off here and let you guys keep going. I'll be listening while I'm getting ready for bed and watching Little House on the Prairie now. But I'll tell you what. anything we think about now is going to be speculation until facts start to come out. Satellite imagery on the ground, Mossad's there, the CIA's there. They're there. Okay, they're going to give the evaluations. We're going to see exactly what happened. We'll get the results. It's just getting daylight in Iran now. So we'll start to get information. Now we'll see how nations respond. One of the nations is going to be interesting for me to hear from. Nobody's talking about. We're talking about Russia. We're talking about, nobody's talking about Ukraine right now. We will talk about Ukraine and keep rolling, of course. But tough night in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine. Kramatorsk and Slavyansk hit devastatingly by glide bombs. A 17-year-old teenager killed in the streets in Slavyansk. But we expect to hear something from Xi Jinping, something from Putin. But there's a nation nobody's talking about, and it's Erdogan in Turkey. Now, what is Erdogan going to say? Because he has had a very different opinion in regard to Iran and Israel. Now, Turkey is Sunni, and Iran and the Ayatollah Shia Islam, and they have the different sects, and we're not going to go into that teaching now. But Erdogan hates Israel, and it's going to be interesting to see what he says tomorrow, because he's been ramping up the rhetoric as well, but nobody's really talking about it, because we're watching Ukraine, we're watching Putin, and we're hearing what Trump is threatening, and now we see it. We watch what Israel's doing, what Iran does, but Erdogan's been very vocal. It's just not getting a lot of play in the media, but it may tomorrow. So I'm going to be looking for those kind of statements, what come out, and then try to draw a real picture on this.
Well, it's hard for us to interact in the Middle East at all without Turkey's assistance in some way. So if Turkey...
100%.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in Turkey in November. And
I will have your Canadian flag for you.
I'm planning to be in Turkey in November. I'm planning to be in Ukraine at the end of next month, and I will be. And I'm planning to be in Turkey in November, but November's a long ways away from here when we're slinging bombs the way we're slinging bombs and missiles. So,
you need to have the "I'm Canadian" A sticker on your backpack, and you'll be fine. That's better than armor.
Well, thank you. I can tell you, I told you guys a couple minutes ago, Hezbollah was attacking Israel out of Lebanon. The IDF is now smashing southern Lebanon. So. Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
This is where we're at now, guys.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Hey, thank you to everybody.
Thank you for coming on. You are always welcome. So, and you've learned. That. I don't know that you're here until you text me, which you did. So, thank you.
No, I was in the room. I'm going, okay, let me hop in. I want to ask you guys some questions. So, thank you guys for everything, and we'll keep at it tomorrow. So,
get some sleep, and
you do the same. And Commander, thank you very much, and thank you for your expertise and service, my friend.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Good night there at In Time.
Take care.
Yeah, man.
Night.
Bye-bye.
And that is Greg Terry from the Greg Terry Experience, and he's a good friend of the show. I have to grudgingly admit that I really like the guy, so and I consider him a friend. So did I really say that on air? That's something I've been trying to avoid, like any paper trail on that people can like definitively prove. But he and I get along well, and he's a very good guy. I like him. So, all right. We are not going to continue following up all of the tit for tat with Jordan, Hezbollah, and Israel, in part because, as much as I hate to say it, we call that Tuesday. They're going to be fighting back and forth. The big questions is what's going to happen with Iran, and he brings up a good point about Turkey. Any thoughts about Turkey before we go?
One of Erdogan's stated goals has been to restore Turkey to a position of preeminence in the Middle East slant Muslim world, kind of like going back to the old Ottoman days. So I can see him using this to some degree to get people mad about Israel, get them on board with, see, Turkey's leading the noble Muslim charge here. We have to remember that we have a couple of installations in Turkey. We still have supposedly some nuclear weapons stored in Turkey. And it's long been thought that effectively having those nuclear weapons in Turkey at Incirlik is basically allowing Turkey to hold us hostage. Because if they decide to seize them, there's really not a lot we can do about it. So, yeah, I think what Turkey does will be quite interesting, particularly since Erdogan's having some of his own domestic problems and may need some distractions.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
The number of leaders who need distractions is concerning.
Yes.
All right. That was also a very interesting thing about Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, yeah, I would imagine if she stood up to Trump, she's going to be out very soon, even if she was doing it in his own best interest. It's like nobody knows, but you don't. Yeah, I think everybody here's got that. So let me quickly check the live chat, make sure I have not missed anything. I don't think nope, I have not. All right, so we are good. Thank you all for joining us. That was Trump's speech on the what appears at first glance to be the total destruction of 3 sites. We're not going to really know for, as you said, the assessment of that usually takes months, and you have to have people on the ground. Mossad is most on the ground there. I think
we'll have at least some reasonable ability to judge how successful the operation was by Monday. I mean, it won't be definitive, but it'll be enough to get an idea of how successful the attack was.
Okay. And the Ayatollah has made it clear that he is going to retaliate. We've talked about some of his options. I think all of those options can be done, at will, so he can wait, or he can do it now. And I think there is some benefit to doing the same thing that Trump did, which is like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you my answer on a total surrender in 2 weeks. And then just, strike when he feels like. So we will see how that works out. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your support. Thank you to Commander, who has come on twice today in a sudden rush of urgency. And to all the rest of you, please do like, subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell for all notifications, because we have our regularly scheduled shows. The next one, Tuesday, is going to be In Time as Andrew and I, but you're not going to get the notifications when we go live on something if you haven't hit that bell. So hit the bell, and we look forward to whatever it is we have to watch, whether it's Trump stumbling through his speech or, watching MAGA attack the Capitol, whatever it is that we have to watch. We get to do it together and figure out how to make sense of what we're seeing. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time. Again, Commander, thank you, and have a good night.